Azure Policy is a control service in Azure that you use to create, assign, and manage policies. These policies enforce different rules and effects over your resources, so those resources stay compliant with your corporate standards and service level agreements. Azure Policy meets this need by evaluating your resources for non-compliance with assigned policies. For example, you can have a policy to allow only a certain virtual machine stock keeping unit in your environment. Once this policy is implemented, new and existing resources are evaluated for compliance. With the right type of policy, existing resources can be brought into compliance. This approach to creating a policy follows 5 steps. The first step is to identify your business requirements. Then you map each requirement to an Azure resource property and then determine which effect to use. The next step is to compose the policy definition and finally initiate the policy. The journey of creating and implementing a policy in Azure Policy begins with creating a policy definition. Before creating the policy definition, it's important to understand the intent of the policy. For example, a common enterprise security requirement could be that each storage account must be enabled for HTTPS and each storage account must be disabled for HTTP. A possible business requirement for the above policy could be defined as preventing the creation of resources if they aren't compliant with business rules. Your requirements should clearly identify both the to be and the not to be resource states. While we have defined the expected state of the resource, we haven't defined what we want done with non-compliant resources. Policy supports a number of effects, which I will highlight later in this lecture. Every policy definition has conditions under which it's enforced and a defined effect that takes place if the conditions are met. You can define policies by using built-in policies or custom policies. A policy assignment is a policy definition that has been assigned to take effect within a specific scope. This scope could be a management group, subscription, or a resource group. A policy applied to a resource group is inherited by all the resources in that resource group. You can exclude a subscope from the policy assignment. For example, in this picture, I have created 2 resource groups, DevOps and Enterprise Architecture Virtual Machines. To reduce cost, I am limiting every resource group with the exception of DevOps from using any other virtual machine sizes besides the standard B1s. To test this policy, I created a virtual machine inside the Enterprise Architecture Resource Group with a standard D2 version 3 size as indicated by the expression value. Upon a failed validation, the raw section shows that the template deployment failed because of a policy validation failure. This is not the case when I try to create a virtual machine inside the DevOps resource group using different virtual machine sizes as defined for other resource groups. There are many different scenarios which warrant the use of the exclusion option. It all depends on your business requirements. When defining policies, you could make use of policy parameters to help simplify your policy management by reducing the number of policy definitions you must create. You can define parameters when creating a policy definition to make it more generic. You can then use that policy definition for different scenarios. You do so by passing in different values when assigning the policy definition. For example, specifying a different set of stock keeping units for different subscriptions. An initiative definition is a collection of policy definitions that are tailored towards achieving a singular overarching goal. Initiative definitions simplify managing and assigning policy definitions. They simplify by grouping a set of policies as one single item. For example, to meet the privacy laws by my banking client, all data must be stored within the African continent. Part of my strategy to meet this business requirement is to ensure that all compute resources must be created and stored in South Africa. All resource groups must be located in South Africa, and each compute resource must be in the same location as the resource group. Azure Policy includes 3 built-in policies that meet my objective. The audit resource location matches resource group policy audits that the resource location matches its resource group location. So if I create a resource in South Africa, its location must be the same as the location of the resource group it is defined in. The allowed locations enables my client to restrict the locations they can specify when deploying resources. Finally, the allowed locations for resource group policy enables the bank to restrict the locations its engineers can create resource groups in. Considering that these 3 policies help me achieve one objective, I will create a policy initiation that combines the functionality of the 3 individual policies and then assign one initiative to my DevOps resource group. Like a policy assignment, an initiative assignment is an initiative definition assigned to a specific scope. Initiative assignments reduce the need to make several initiative definitions for each scope. This scope could also range from a management group to a resource group. Like policy parameters, initiative parameters help simplify initiative management by reducing redundancy. Initiative parameters are parameters being used by the policy definitions within the initiative. Each policy definition in Azure Policy has a single effect. That effect determines what happens when the policy is evaluated to match. The effects behave differently if they are for a new resource, an updated resource, or an existing resource. The append effect is used to add additional fields to the requested resource during creation or update. A common example is adding tags on resources such as cost center or specifying allowed IPs for a storage resource. The deny effect is used to prevent a resource request that doesn't match defined standards through a policy definition. The deny effect fails the request. The audit effect is used to create a warning event in the activity log when evaluating a non-compliant resource, but it doesn't stop the request. The audit if not exist effect enables auditing on resources that match the if condition, but doesn't have the components specified in the details of the then condition. The deploy if not exist effect is similar to audit if not exist. Deploy if not exist executes a template deployment when the condition is met. Lastly, the disabled effect makes it possible to disable a single assignment instead of disabling all of that policy's assignments. When it comes to policy assignments, it is recommended that you start with an audit effect instead of a deny effect to track impact of your policy definition on the resources in your environment. If you have scripts already in place to auto-scale your applications, setting a deny effect may hinder such automation tasks already in place. It is recommended that you consider organizational hierarchies when creating definitions and assignments. It is recommended that you create definitions at higher levels such as the management group or subscription level, and then create the assignment at the next child level. If you create a definition at the management group, the assignment can be scoped down to a subscription or resource group within that management group. It is recommended that you create and assign initiative definitions even for a single policy definition. Once you have created an initiative assignment, policy definitions added to the initiative also become part of that initiative's assignments. When an initiative assignment is evaluated, all policies within the initiative are also evaluated. If you need to evaluate a policy individually, it's better to not include it in an initiative. In the next lecture, I will dive deeper into creating Azure policies using several design scenarios.